recording yet.
Hey, sports fans! PBnZ Sports Chaos. We're back at you. Last week we had a little hiatus. No, it was not because PB was being in quarantine. PB, where were you last week?
Oh, had a little vacation, very spontaneously, went down to Puerto Rico, had a fantastic time. And I'll tell you, I love that Latin love. I love that Latin love. As a matter of fact, I got two Latinas here with me tonight. Giving me my shot of tequila.
Oh, muchas gracias. Oh, I love it. Senora, senorita. Oh.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, PB, you know what? It's fitting because this week, as Desi Arnaz used to say on the I Love Lucy show, Lucy, you got some splaining to do this week, and you're the redhead. You got some splaining about the NHL in a moment. We're going to have a little fun with that. Our stories this week, NHL, Celtics. We're going to talk about what happened over there and what's going to happen going forward. By the way, there is one good news about the NBA. The Lakers lost two, as we all know. They cannot go ahead of the Celtics in all-time titles. Yes, I love it. But the all-time Boston villain now is Kyrie Irving. He's still playing. We'll talk about that momentarily as well. Hey, MLB, this is getting crazy. They're cracking down and they're doing some dress downs potentially. 8 to 10 uniform checks a game. We'll talk about that momentarily. There's something called spider tack. I never heard it in my life. Have you?
I have not.
Oh, my God. All right. Hey, first of all, a couple of shout-outs. Congrats to the BC women. Prior week, they won the NCAA lacrosse. PB, they've been in the last 4 championship games. They finally won their first ever. But that's a pretty good run, 4 times in the title game. And finally, at least you won one. The Buffalo Bills didn't, right?
Yeah, right. That's like a mini dynasty almost.
Oh, man. Speaking of dynasties, I'm glad you brought it up. The team that may be the best all-time ever. They set multiple records, 161 home runs this year. By the way, more home runs they hit this year than strikeouts. Go figure. In this day and age, 638 runs. They went to the College World Series. They hit 15 home runs there. They had 49 runs scored. Every game they lost this year, they lost 4 times. They avenged that loss with 2 wins against the team they lost to. That team is the Oklahoma Lady Sooners in college softball. Dominating performance. I love the Lady Sooners. I love college football. Congratulations. All right. Hey, also, by the way, the previous week, Coach K announced his retirement from the NCAA next year. So, PB, you know what that means? He's officially one and done, like most of his recruits lately, right? Hey, by the way, is he one of the 2 or 3 or maybe 1 or 2 greatest NCAA basketball coaches ever, men's?
Yeah, I mean, that'd be an interesting list. We should do that on one of our shows, like a top 5 all time. I mean, you got to go, Boeheim's got to be up there somewhere.
Obviously, John Wooden with all the titles he won at UCLA.
Wooden's got to
right?
be up there. Yeah, that'd be an interesting little top 5 we can do on a show someday.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Hey, we're going to talk MLB cheating in a moment. What's going on there? But first, I got to talk about another cheater. So Bob Baffert, we talked about this after the Kentucky Derby, his Medina chick or whatever it was called, funky called Medina, I don't even remember what it is, got tested positive. It tested positive a second time. And now Baffert is suspended from all of horse racing for 2 years. He's now officially the Jose Canseco, Mark McGuire, Brady Anderson, Barry Bonds, and Manny Ramirez of horse racing. PB, what do you think of this? PEDs and horses?
I know. It's crazy. You know, it's not the horse's fault, which makes it worse. But, you know, that human element of the trainer, and he's been such a charismatic figure over the last few years with the derbies and with the Triple Crown and everything else that he's been part of. And to see this happen, it's just it's one of those like deflating things. If you're a fan of horse racing, it just kind of takes the wind out of your sails a little bit. And
it does.
It disappoints. You know, it's disappointing. It really is disappointing.
Yeah, because he is one of the all-time greats. And now he's taken, just like Barry Bonds and those other guys, right?
Right. And sometimes people approach these things with, it's not what you do, it's what you get caught doing. And he got caught.
Whoa! a segue. It's like we have a producer. We're going to talk about MLB and what just got announced this week. They're now cracking down on illegal substances on pitchers. They're going to now mandate that umpires check the pitchers and the positional players too, because sometimes the positional player will put it on his shirt, the pitcher will come over and wipe his shirt, and then pitch again. They want a minimum of 8 to 10 checks per game. This is going to slow down the game even more. It's unbelievable. But apparently everybody does it. And the funniest thing this week, I don't know if you saw this, Garrett Cole was in an interview, PB. He got asked point blank about it, and they asked him, do you use spider tack or have you ever used spider tack? And he was like, I can't answer that question. It's a yes or no question, Garrett. So apparently, if you don't answer it, what does that mean?
Yeah, pretty much you're saying you're guilty.
But now every manager's coming out and saying, yeah, well, everybody does it apparently. And I was reading into this. You want the stickiness so you can control the ball on the edge of your fingertip for the longest possible, then the spin gets more aggressive.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's all about the spin rate. But the fact that they have the technology in place now where they can actually look at spin rates of a baseball, stuff that you couldn't do in the past. In the past, you'd be looking at guys like, Phil Negro breaking out the little file out of his back pocket and shaving the ball down a little bit, right? It was a little bit more, obvious those days. Now it's like there's so many things you can do. And the fact that they have the technology to look at spin rates and notice that they're up and off, if you will, that they can test that. You know what I mean? It's strange, but it's.
I got one thing to say to you. MLB, NFL, the same thing. Don't leave the footballs tacky. Or the baseballs, I was slick. Rough them up a little bit before you put them in the game so they can get a little grip on them. That's what it's all about is grip. Why leave that slick coating on them? I don't get it, but right. I don't know.
That's why they rub down the balls. That's why they have rosin bags. That's kind of part of the game in a way.
Yeah. Find another way to make the balls. I don't know. All right, let's move on to something that doesn't use balls. They use pucks. NHL. PB, you were beating your chest a couple of weeks ago about the Avs being so good. Cool. Look at my prediction. I got the team that's plus 100. I'm still picking them to win it all. What the heck happened? They were up 2-0 against somebody's Vegas Knights.
Yeah. I mean, you've liked the Vegas Knights all along, all year. You predicted them before the season started to be in the Cup, and you predicted them in the playoff special to be in the Cup. And I was riding the Avs, and I knew those were probably the two best teams in the NHL, and that series was going to be one of the best series in the entire Stanley Cup playoffs. The Avs fell apart. I mean, McKinnon was just on fire. He was playing awesome. I posted that video on PBnZ of him just skating past the defense and putting the puck in the top shelf. I mean, they were just looked unstoppable. They looked unbelievable. And all of a sudden they just lost it, and the Golden Knights dug in and they were skating hard. They were playing like they wanted it. They were playing good defense. They were forechecking, back checking, neutral zone. Everything that the Knights were doing during those last 4 games were countering the Avalanche's attack. And you know what?
4 straight.
They deserve it. And some of those wins were big wins. They were scoring 5-6 goals in some of those games. So credit to the Knights. And because I said those two teams were the best in the league, happen to be in the same division, at this point, you got to like the Knights to make it to the Cup. By
the way, go ahead. You are a hockey expert. How many teams you got going to the finals?
So based on our preseason preview of the NHL, I had the Avalanche against the Lightning. So I still got the Lightning alive there, but the Avalanche obviously are out, to my disappointment. But in our preview special, I was riding the home team here, the Panthers, and I that was a mistake on my part. So I'm sitting at 0-4 now, going into the Final Four, which is just, I'm beside myself about it. I mean, I wasn't picking obvious teams. I had the Winnipeg Jets coming out of the Canadian division, and they swept Edmonton. You actually had Edmonton in the Cup. You had Edmonton in the Cup over Vegas. You had Vegas in your Final Four, though. So, I mean, I made some good picks there in the first round, but then that second round to me was very surprising. I'm surprised the Bruins lost the way they did. I'm surprised that, the Avalanche lost the way they did. But you know what? Give it credit. The Islanders are playing great. The Golden Knights are playing great. The Canadians. Let's talk about the Canadians. They sweep the Winnipeg Jets, who had just swept the Edmonton Oilers. So there's.
Let me ask you a quick question. Between the two sports going on right now, NBA and NHL, there's no blue bloods left other than the Canadians. Would you like to see them be in the finals? I mean, the Celtics and Lakers aren't going to be in the finals, obviously, right?
But saying you'd like to see them in the finals, like saying you'd like to see the Lakers in the finals. I mean, they're basically the arch rival of the Bruins. You can't say I'd like to see them in the finals.
I wouldn't mind though. I'd like to see the little legacy, historic team.
Right? Yeah, they're the only original 6 team that's left. So.
Yeah.
Add an interesting element to it, but you know what? There's no way they're getting past the Vegas Knights. I'll stand by that right now. The Vegas Knights.
Me neither. I picked Vegas to go all the way. I'm sticking with it.
Yeah. Well, in our preseason special, you picked the Knights, just like I picked the Lightning. But in our playoff special, you picked the Oilers to be in the Cup.
Oh, okay. Yeah. All right.
Yeah, you picked the Oilers, and I picked, the Avalanche. So we're both out of that one. But you still did a great.
I got 3 teams. That's all that matters. I got 3.
Was pretty impressive. All
right, PB. Let's talk about NBA for a minute. As we know, a week ago, the Celtics got knocked out by the Nets. Danny quits, and then apparently he takes the C+ student and makes him the valedictorian of the class. Brad Stevens is now in charge. I can ask you a question. In America, if you're in a corporation, does an average employee get promoted to president? Never.
That does not happen.
No. So we now take an average employee, we make him president, and he's going to run this organization. What do you think? Good luck, Celtics, in my opinion.
Yeah. I was very, very surprised at that move. We thought Stevens was on his way out, and instead he gets promoted.
A promotion.
I know. I know. It's just, and now they have to find a head coach, and who knows? I mean, as long as he can manage the personnel, maybe if they get a different coach in there that coaches different style basketball, that there's some hope there.
Well, if he can relate to the players. I don't think Brad could relate to the players at the end of the day. He's not an NBA guy, and those guys wanted somebody they could look up and say, hey, you're an NBA legend, blah, blah, blah.
Which in a way is a saving grace, because that means he may end up being successful in his new role based on that point that you just made. And maybe he goes out and finds a coach that can actually step up and do those things in that role. I mean, there's no doubt the Celtics have young talent.
They do. They do.
No
they got to figure out how to
Tatum
coach them.
and Brown as the kind of the cornerstone of that team. There's no reason why they can't be right in the mix with the Bucks and the Sixers and the Nets going forward. The Nets are going to get old pretty fast, and Tatum and Brown are younger than those guys. So I mean, there's some hope there. I mean, it'd be interesting to take a look at which team we think in this Boston sports world is next to actually compete for a champion.
Well, that'll be an interesting topic in future shows. But let's talk about the NBA for a minute. So as we talked about earlier, the Lakers are gone. The Clippers are on the ropes right now. I know I picked them, but I'm happy to see them lose because they took some guys that had time off. The Lakers, and we talked about this, we're going to have another show about this. They took most of the season off. They thought it was exhibition season until they got the playoffs, and you can't start it up in the playoffs, apparently, right? They proved that to be the situation. You got to play the whole season. So right now, I'll tell you what, I'm leaning towards the Jazz because they played their guys all year long.
Yeah. And I like the Suns, the way the Suns playing. I was a big proponent of the Suns on our preview show before the season even started. I like what they're doing. I'm surprised that they did get past the Lakers. I thought the Lakers would just step up with LeBron and everything.
We both did.
But they didn't. And you know what? That's going to be an interesting rest of the way in the West with both series going on right now.
And then in the East, I mean, God forbid the Nets, who only played 7 games with their top 5, if they move on, and they've looked good, although they lost last night. Milwaukee played great defense. But Harden's out. When Harden comes back, I'm sure he'll come back. God forbid these guys pull it off. And by the way, is Kyrie, I got to mention this because we talked about at the top of the show. Is Kyrie now the biggest villain in Boston sports history?
Oh, in sports history, I don't know.
Boston sports. Boston.
Yeah, that's what I
sports.
mean. I mean, that's what I mean. In Boston, probably not. I
All right,
mean,
maybe Al Samuelson first, right?
yeah, I mean, there's a lot of guys. I mean, we could that'd be a show in and of itself too. Biggest Boston sports villains. I don't know. I wouldn't. I mean, Irving.
But he incited what happened a week ago when the whole situation with the fan happened. He made those comments. He stomped on the logo. You know what, Kyrie? Have some respect. That's all I gotta say.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Hey, by the
I
way,
would love. I would
Go ahead.
love to see. I just would love to see the Nets fall. I mean, you and I both said before in our preview special. I mean, our playoff special that we want to see the Lakers and the Nets lose for that reason because of the whole load management aspect of the game.
regular season doesn't count at that point in time. If they win, the regular
Right.
season doesn't count.
Right, which is why Jokic deserved to get the MVP.
Good point. I'm glad you brought that up. Good point. He played every game this year.
Every game. He had basically almost a triple-double average in the season. So he deserved it. There's no question about it. But to see the Lakers fall off the way they did in the first round of the playoffs was awesome. And I wish the same thing would happen to Brooklyn. I just, but
I have a feeling. I don't know. Milwaukee didn't look good in the first two games. I know they won last night. We'll see. And by the way, the Sixers, Embiid does not have a torn meniscus. There's no way. I've torn 3 meniscus. You don't come out the next night and go up for 40 points and run and jump up and down the field all night, court all night. There's no way. That's a lie. By the way, he is still the softest guy in the NBA. I don't care what anybody says. All right, PB, any parting shots?
On the NBA or just in general?
In general.
In general, I mean, we didn't touch NFL at all this week, so we're gonna have to talk about some of the moves. We have to talk about Julio Jones, and
He finally moved. He's on another
he finally
team.
moved. He's on the Titans now, opposite AJ Brown. So that should make for an interesting little offense going on there.
True.
But especially with Derrick Henry at the running back, that's a pretty interesting big three right there. But yeah, I mean, we gotta talk NFL next week and some of the moves that have been happening, and teams are starting to have their practices now, non-mandatory practices, but even still, there's players getting injured already. The Patriots tight end that they picked up is already.
49ers already had two big injuries. They cut the rest of their practices.
Yeah, Hunter Henry's already hurt. So we'll see. There's a lot of stuff going on in the NBA, and we really have to start gearing ourselves up for that season.
Little NFL. All right, next week, NFL talk. All right, Mr. PB, congratulations. You made it back from Puerto Rico safe, apparently with a couple of friends. You're doing well. Love to see it. I'll talk to you next week.
All right, brother.